And we've talked to the reporter from the Capital Times, Danielle DeClose, here on this show this week. She wrote an article last Friday in the Capital Times on Dr. Jill Underly and the Department of Public Instruction. And I'll set it up quickly again because I think there's two main concerns I have. A, the allegations in this article, and some of them actually did basically, I don't want to say admit legally, but resign their positions and gave up their licenses because they're over 200, and they're not all teachers, by the way. If you do the math on this, and I had to do it off the air because I don't do math on the air very well. If you add up all of the licensed teachers in the state of Wisconsin and you divide that by 200, what this article is talking about is less than a percent. So it's like 0.3% of educators in the state of what this affects. All right. So let's make that clear that the overwhelming 99.7% of teachers in the state are not in this category. But you have this one batch, 200, that either gave up their licenses as they're able to do under Wisconsin law in exchange for not having allegations of grooming and sexual misconduct advanced. And there are questions why these records were not more easily accessible to the public, and also why their records are not annotated so that they can't go get a job somewhere else in dealing with kids in the state. And the reporter for the Cap Times, Danielle DeClose, gave Dr. Jill Underly, the superintendent of public instruction, several opportunities to sit for an interview as a part of this, and she declined. She sent her communications guy, i.e. a flack. I used to be a flack for a state senator, a spokesperson. It's another name for a spokesperson. And he basically said, well, she can't talk because it's a conflict of interest, and I can't find anybody to explain to me what that conflict of interest is legally. She's been invited on this program many times. She quit coming on, Dr. Underly did, over a year and a half ago. And I've said some very nice things about her to her face at a Wisconsin Public Education Network conference. I asked people to give her a hand for the great job she was doing like 2 years ago. And then she was up for re-election this spring. She refused to participate in the debate forum with her opponents, and she gets reelected. And now the state assembly is meeting today at the state capitol, and the assembly committee asked Dr. Underly at the beginning of the week to come to this hearing today, and she has now left the state. She is at some meeting in Indiana and said that's why she can't be here today. As a former district director for a United States congressman in Wisconsin, as a former communication director and deputy chief of staff for a Senate majority leader, i.e. Dale Schultz in the state, and as a former chief of staff for a senior state senator in this state, one of your main responsibilities to you and your boss is to help them think what's important now. Popular phrase by Lou Holtz, former coach of Notre Dame. What's important now? And think, okay, where are the best resources? Where should our boss be that does him and his constituents the most good? Because you got all kinds of requests. There is no excuse in my book why Dr. Underly left the state today for some conference in Indiana and is not sitting her posterior a block away from where I'm at in a committee hearing to answer these questions. And yes, I'm sure some of the Republican questions would have been off base. But that's the price you pay for putting yourself out there as an elected official and being elected. And the fact that she doesn't want to take questions raises a lot more suspicions. Here's what she did do. She released a video today. So about 4 minutes. We're going to play about a minute and a half of it. Going to pick it up. Our first minute or so, obviously stating we should protect kids. And then she gets into the heart of rebutting against this story in the Capital Times. Here is Dr. Underly's pre-recorded statement, which is clearly edited, by the way. Here is Dr. Underly's statement she released this morning.
Every child deserves to walk into a classroom where they feel safe, respected, and free to learn without fear. And that is non-negotiable. We investigate every single complaint we receive. And these investigations are conducted thoroughly, professionally, and within the legal authority given to us. Licensure actions, whether it's a suspension, revocation, or voluntary surrender, are not made lightly. They are based on evidence, not speculation, on due process and not headlines. Let me also address a dangerous misconception. When an educator voluntarily surrenders their license, that is not a loophole. It is a serious, permanent action. Their name is entered into a national database and is shared among all state education agencies, flagging them for educator licensing agencies across the country. That protects kids. And we do not do this work in the shadows. Our process is transparent and is available for anyone to see. And through our educator licensing database, anyone can look up the status of an educator's license at any time. If someone is under investigation, it's there. If a license has been voluntarily surrendered or revoked, it's there. That's transparency, and that's accountability. We welcome discussions about reform, but let me stress, reforms must be based on facts, not fear or headlines. I invite legislators, law enforcement, educators, and families to come to the table and help build a stronger system that protects every child and respects the rule of law.
There you go. Dr. Jill Underley. Last part, I want to make clear, or it's about a minute on the front of that where she's just, in my opinion, it's fluff. It's just stating, I'm against, I'm for keeping kids safe, or okay, fine. And then at the back end of that, after where we cut it off, she's going through a list of bills that are in the legislature, which she is saying she would help support what she needs. But then she calls for Dr. Underley does in this video a new licensing system and says it needs to be fully funded and supported and staffed. I don't disagree. What I find inexcusable is why she is not in a public setting in front of the legislative committee and the press and available to take questions before and afterwards or afterwards in the hall of the press of Wisconsin and tell people about this. And just like with the Knowles Nelson Stewardship Fund, which also did not get funded in the joint finance and the governor's budget this year, guess what they did? They immediately went to the public and said, look, we didn't get it in the budget, but this is really important, and this is why. And they've been working with Republicans and Democrats to get a standalone bill to save this program. Why wasn't Dr. Jill Underley and people at DPI out in the streets? Why weren't they in the halls of the Capitol saying, look, you guys made a huge mistake. You cut out $600,000, and this is what it means. I don't have enough funding, staffing, or support to keep our kids safe. But instead, it took a great reporter at the Capital Times, a graduate of Columbia J School, one of the finest journalism schools in America, to bring this forward. And when she does, Underley hides behind pre-recorded, heavily edited videos and goes off to Indiana. And look, Indiana, well, Gary, Indiana, it's not so much, but Indiana's a great...